Hey guys, before I begin, I just want to say that if you saw my video from yesterday, some of what I say in this video is going to seem a little bit outdated since I did do the recording about 2 weeks ago, and I was under the impression that season 6 and 7 of the CGI series were still a possibility, which, to be fair, there is still some hope in the community, and I'll be sure to address more of that after I get back from my trip to Mexico. But regardless, I still am very proud of this elaboration, and I think it's worth sharing. On that note, this will probably be one of the last, if not the last video that I make of 2023, and I just want to say thank y'all so much for your support of the last year. This channel has grown in many ways, and I hope to keep that up into 2024. So, again, thank y'all so much. Happy holidays, and now, on with the show. Hello, Chipmunk and Chipette fans. My name is Grandy Tamayas, and welcome back to another installment of Alvin and the Chipmunks Elaborations. Today's topic will be, should the franchise, particularly the CGI series, do more movie parody episodes? So, back in 1990, the final season of the Chipmunks' second generation series that started in 1983 consisted of 13 episodes, which were all parodies of famous movies around that time. This season rebranded the show as The Chipmunks Go to the Movies, which was actually a name borrowed from an album that the Chipmunks had made back in 1969. Anyway, some of the movies parodied in this season included Back to the Future, Star Trek, the 1989 Batman, RoboCop, Indiana Jones, King Kong, and Dick Tracy, just to name a couple. Parodies of Jaws, Frankenstein, and Star Wars were also shown in the title sequence, but were never made into full episodes. Funny enough, most of these episodes have actually been released on DVD. The only ones that haven't are episodes that parodied Gremlins, E.T., and National Lampoon's European Vacation. Oh, and the King Kong episode got a release on VHS. It's all the more ironic since, aside from the theme song, there were no new original songs created for this season, and typically covers of licensed songs have been a limiting factor for episodes that have been able to get re-released. Season 6 and 7 had mostly original songs, yet comparatively fewer episodes from those got DVD releases. Side note, the Chipmunks' cover of Danger Zone by Kenny Loggins used in Batmonk just slaps, and I just really wish it had gotten a release on an album. Oh yeah, and I should also mention that there were some scattered instances of parodies in the prior seasons, not just of movies like The Maltese Falcon, but TV shows like Miami Vice and Moonlighting. But getting back to the point of this video, should the franchise ever do something like this season again, perhaps in the CGI series, if that's going to continue? Well, I'm not sure. The landscape of movies has changed dramatically since the 90s, and it'd be only a matter of time before they have to resort to the bigger franchises and sequels, like Fast and Furious, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or modern Star Wars. Then again, some of the movies they covered in Go to the Movies had sequels by that point or were based on something from decades before. Cases in point, some of the movies I already mentioned, like Back to the Future, Indiana Jones, Batman, of course being based on a comic book, and King Kong. I'm not sure if the King Kong episode was based on the 1976 King Kong movie specifically, but that one was a reboot of the 1933 King Kong. Of course, there are a bunch of movies that they didn't cover back in the 80s or before that they could still cover now. Like, I'm surprised that they never did a parody of The Wizard of Oz. That's one of the all-time classic movies. Or Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I'm sure Theodore would like that one. The Shining? Probably not. If they did, they'd have to tone it down significantly. Same if they did another horror movie like The Poltergeist. They'd have to use kid-friendly ghosts. Which reminds me, Ghostbusters. I mean, they already covered the theme song in the episode Who Ghosts There? The CGI series has made a few references to Child's Play, so I assume the Bagdasarians are fans of those films. The first one came out in 1988, so they could have covered that in Go to the Movies, but I don't see how they could have toned down the concept of a doll that literally kills people. Personally, I would have loved it if they had parodied the 1968 Planet of the Apes film. Maybe call it Planet of the Chipmunks, and have Dave in the role of Taylor, and the Chipmunks being Earth's dominant species. Plus, it'd be a great opportunity to show more, f*** it, you already get it by now, I've run that into the ground so many times. The current generation now has a new Dune, but it would have been cool if Go to the Movies had parodied the David Lynch Dune. Then again, it'd be hard for a 22-minute episode to adapt a 2-hour movie that itself failed to adapt an 800-page novel. It'd probably have to be a 2 or 3-parter, and even then, they'd probably have to rush it. Also, I wonder if they'd keep the sandworms or call them something else. The original Go to the Movies season missed the first Jurassic Park movie by a few years, but now our generation has Jurassic World. And dinosaurs have always been popular in movies. If they were to adapt the first Jurassic Park, which I think would be most likely, they could probably have Alvin as Dr. Grant, Brittany or one of the other Chipettes as Dr. Sattler, and Simon as Dr. Malcolm. I feel like Simon would be perfect for that role. If they were to adapt Jurassic World or one of its two sequels, they could have Alvin as the super awesome Owen Grady, and Brittany as Claire Dearing. I think that'd seem obvious, almost like typecasting at this point. I don't know if they'd go with the whole hybrid dinosaur thing like in those films, or just stick to regular species. And for those of you who know me well enough, I think it'd be a good opportunity to show more scientifically accurate dinosaurs and more obscure species. But since kids' shows don't like to push the envelope on science, they'd probably just stick to the same T-Rex, Triceratops, and Stegosaurus that we're also used to seeing. Speaking of dinosaurs, I'd also enjoy a chipmunk parody of 1969's The Valley of Gwangi, which, in addition to being a dinosaur film, is also a Western film. They could probably do Westerns too, but we've all heard the expression how that genre fell out of favor with audiences starting around the 70s. I wouldn't care which Western movies the Chipmunks covered, as long as we get a good episode out of it. As I mentioned earlier, the title sequence showed a Frankenstein parody, which I'm guessing if they had done, we probably would not have gotten Alvin and the Chipmunks Meet Frankenstein. Same if they had done Wolfman, but maybe they could try another 1930s Universal monster, like the original Dracula starring Bela Lugosi, or The Invisible Man starring Claude Rains. Great films, by the way. Check them out if you have the patience to sit through really old movies like that. Then again, we did have an episode of the CGI series where Alvin turned invisible, so it'd be weird if they rehashed that concept, even if it was a different chipmunk, probably Simon. But honestly, I think Alvin, personality-wise, would fit the role of Jack Griffin better. Also, I normally don't do this outside of my update videos, but I got these comments recently about the Chipmunks meeting classic movie monsters. I think the options are kind of limited if they were to meet anymore, not just spoof their movies. Plus, like I said years ago, it would have gotten old after 2 films since encountering monsters isn't what Alvin and the Chipmunks is supposed to be about. Meeting a mummy would probably require a trip to Egypt, same for Dracula in Europe, or they could find some way to already have them in California like in the Meat Monster movies. Or perhaps the creature from the Black Lagoon, which they did reference in the CGI series. Lastly, going back to what I said earlier about the 80s series parodying TV shows too, I think the most obvious would be Game of Thrones, since they've referenced it several times in the CGI series. Plus, Brittany would be the obvious choice to play Daenerys Targaryen. They would just have to omit the gore, swearing, and getting lucky aspects of the show, which is pretty much the entire show. A lot of that could also apply to Breaking Bad. I love that show, but I don't see the Chipmunks ever doing that one. It's literally about an illicit substance.
Yes, science!
So, to conclude, I definitely think that there are a lot of options for films that the CGI series or a future reboot could parody. Even excluding modern sequels and remakes, there are some that I'd love to see. But at the same time, I wouldn't want the series to become defined by parodies of movies the way that people already associate the franchise with cover songs that are high-pitched. I should probably do an elaboration about that, too. Then again, some of the films I mentioned in this video are over 90 years old, so you can't really call them out for trend surfing if they were to do those now, compared to how the Chipmunks Go to the Movies covered ones that were mostly from the previous decade. Feel free to let me know in the comments. Would you like to see the Alvin and the Chipmunks franchise do movie parody episodes again? And if so, what movies? As always, you can leave suggestions for future topics of Alvin and the Chipmunks Elaborations. And if you would like to join my Discord community or follow me on Twitter, those respective links will be in the description of this video. With all that said, I hope you enjoyed, have a nice day, and thank you for your time.